Japanese Americans, innocent prisoners during World War II. The first Japanese came to America in the 1860s. They worked on sugar plantations in Hawaii. Later, many moved to the mainland United States. By 1925, more than 350,000 Japanese were living in the U.S. Some lived in California. Many others lived in the Pacific Northwest states. They worked in the fishing and lumber industries. Some were farmers. The Japanese were educated. They worked hard. They married and started families. First generation Japanese in the U.S. were called Issei. Their children, or the second generation, were called Nisei. On December 7th, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. America then declared war on Japan. This act immediately changed the lives of Japanese Americans. Americans were very angry at Japan. They were also angry with Japanese Americans. President Roosevelt signed a government order. It was called Executive Order 9066. The order forced all Issei and Nisei to move out of their homes. They had 10 days to sell their homes and businesses. Japanese Americans were rounded up and sent to live in detention camps. The camps were called relocation centers. They were in remote parts of the United States. Many families were separated from one another. The living conditions in the camps were terrible. 5 to 8 people were forced to live together in one small room. There was no privacy. The weather was harsh and there was little heat during the winter. There was no running water. The food was awful. Most of the people in the camps had been born in the U.S. More than 70% were American citizens. They were not charged with any crimes, yet Japanese Americans were deprived of their liberties. Finally, they were released from the camps beginning in 1944. 44 years later, the U.S. government apologized for the way that Japanese Americans were treated. President Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act of 1988. This act made a public apology to Japanese Americans for their wartime imprisonment. Each of the 80,000 survivors of these camps received a $20,000 payment.